The morning sun reflected off the polished hoods of luxury cars at Elite Motors, one of Los Angeles' most prestigious car dealerships. Marcus Thompson stood at his office window, straightening his expensive tie as he watched his employees prepare for another day of sales. At 52 years old, with graying hair at his temples and a permanently stern expression, Marcus had been the dealership manager for the past 8 years. He took great pride in what he called running a tight ship. From his elevated office, Marcus could see everything happening on the showroom floor. He watched as Jimmy, a young salesman, forgot to adjust one of the display car's side mirrors to the perfect angle. Sloppy, Marcus muttered under his breath, making a mental note to scold the boy later. Everything had to be perfect. That's how Elite Motors had built its reputation as the go-to dealership for Los Angeles' wealthy clients. The dealership sat in a rapidly changing neighborhood. New businesses were moving in, bringing with them a more diverse crowd of potential customers. But Marcus stuck to his old ways. He had very specific ideas about what a real customer looked like, and he made sure his sales team knew it too. During every morning meeting, he would remind them, "Quality customers only. We're not here to waste time with window shoppers." Sarah Chen, his assistant manager, didn't agree with his views. She had tried several times to show him the sales numbers from other dealerships that had embraced a more welcoming approach. But Marcus would just wave her off, saying, "I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, Sarah. I know what works." That morning, Marcus called his usual team meeting. The sales staff gathered in the conference room, their coffee cups in hand, already knowing what to expect. The room itself showed off Marcus's attention to detail, not a chair out of place, the whiteboard perfectly clean, and the day's sales targets written in his precise handwriting. "Listen up, people," Marcus began, pacing in front of his team. "Yesterday, I saw 3 different salespeople talking to," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "individuals who clearly couldn't afford our inventory. That's time you could have spent with real customers." He pointed to the row of luxury cars visible through the conference room windows. "These aren't Toyota Corollas we're selling. If someone walks in wearing sneakers and jeans, they're not here to buy." Jimmy, the young salesman from earlier, raised his hand nervously. "But sir, last week I sold a Bentley to a tech startup guy who came in wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. He paid cash." Marcus's face turned slightly red. "That's an exception, not the rule. And speaking of rules, Jimmy, I noticed the mirror on the silver Mercedes this morning. Details matter in this business. Fix it after the meeting." Sarah watched this exchange with growing frustration. She knew the neighborhood was full of successful entrepreneurs, artists, and entertainers who didn't fit Marcus's narrow view of what a wealthy person should look like. The dealership was missing out on valuable sales opportunities because of his prejudices. As the meeting continued, Marcus pulled up a spreadsheet on the projector. "Our target demographic," he emphasized, pointing to a chart showing their typical customers, mostly older, predominantly from certain zip codes, and fitting a very specific profile. He had built his entire business strategy around these assumptions. What Marcus didn't know was that his world was about to be turned upside down. While he was lecturing his staff about maintaining standards, changes were already happening above his pay grade. The dealership's parent company had recently been acquired by a new investment group, information that hadn't yet trickled down to the local management level. As the meeting ended and the sales team dispersed, Marcus returned to his office, satisfied with another morning of maintaining what he saw as proper standards. He sat at his desk, adjusted his gold cufflinks, and looked out at the growing morning traffic on Sunset Boulevard. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows caught his attention as it slowly cruised past the dealership. "Probably just another tire kicker," he mumbled to himself, not realizing that his comfortable world of assumptions and prejudices was about to face its biggest challenge yet. The Saturday afternoon sun beat down on Elite Motors showroom windows, making the pristine cars inside sparkle like jewels. It was just past 2 p.m. when the black SUV that Marcus had noticed earlier pulled into the parking lot. 3 men stepped out, their arrival catching the attention of several salespeople who were chatting near the front desk. The tall, slim figure in the middle wore designer sweatpants, a gold chain, and a low-brimmed hat that partially covered his face. On either side of him walked 2 well-dressed men carrying tablets and phones. As they entered through the glass doors, a slight smell of expensive cologne and something else, a sweet, distinct scent, drifted through the air. Sarah Chen was the first to recognize who had just walked in. Her eyes widened, but she stayed professional, watching to see how things would unfold. The famous rapper and businessman Snoop Dogg was examining a limited edition black Mercedes SUV with genuine interest, occasionally nodding as one of his associates took notes. Marcus, who had been reorganizing brochures at the counter, looked up with immediate disapproval. All he saw was three men dressed too casually for his liking, especially the tall one in the middle who was now touching the door handle of a $200,000 vehicle. Marcus straightened his tie and marched across the showroom floor, his leather shoes clicking against the polished tiles. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Marcus said loudly, emphasizing the word gentleman with clear sarcasm. "Can I help you find the exit?" He positioned himself between Snoop and the Mercedes, forcing the rapper to step back. Snoop's associates exchanged glances, but Snoop himself remained calm. "Actually, big man," he said in his characteristic smooth voice, "I'm interested in purchasing a few vehicles for my business fleet." He reached for his wallet, but Marcus cut him off with a wave of his hand. "Sir," Marcus said, his voice dripping with condescension, "this is a luxury car dealership. These vehicles start at prices I'm sure you can't afford. I suggest you try the used car lot down the street." Several customers who were browsing nearby turned to watch the scene unfold. Sarah started walking toward them, hoping to intervene, but Marcus shot her a warning look that stopped her in her tracks. The showroom had grown oddly quiet, with only the soft background music playing through the speakers. Snoop's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sparkled with amusement behind his designer sunglasses. "My man," he said calmly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm actually looking to buy 3 of these," he gestured to the Mercedes, "and maybe that Bentley over there for my personal use." Marcus let out a short, harsh laugh. "Listen here," he said, stepping closer to Snoop. "I've been dealing with people like you for 20 years. You come in here, waste our time, take pictures for your social media, and leave without buying anything. Not today." He turned to one of the junior salespeople. "Call security." The young salesperson stood frozen, recognizing Snoop Dogg and looking horrified at Marcus's behavior. Other employees had gathered at a safe distance, some recording discreetly with their phones, others trying to signal to Marcus who he was talking to. One of Snoop's associates stepped forward, a tablet in hand. "Mr. Thompson," he said firmly, "I don't think you understand Wu." "I understand perfectly," Marcus interrupted. "You 3 need to leave before security arrives. We have cameras everywhere, and I won't hesitate to call the police if necessary." His face had turned red with anger, and a vein pulsed in his forehead. Snoop raised an eyebrow and pulled out his phone. The movement caused his hat to shift slightly, revealing more of his famous face. A customer nearby gasped in recognition, but Marcus was too worked up to notice. He was now listing all the reasons they needed to leave, his voice getting louder with each point. "And furthermore," Marcus continued, "I don't appreciate you people coming in here, touching our vehicles with your—" He paused as he finally noticed that everyone in the showroom was staring at him with looks of horror and disbelief. Even his most loyal employees were shaking their heads. The afternoon sun continued to shine through the showroom windows, illuminating the scene like a spotlight on a stage. Little did Marcus know, but this moment was about to become viral content across social media platforms worldwide, and his comfortable position as manager was about to change dramatically. The tension in Elite Motors' showroom could be cut with a knife. Every employee and customer stood frozen, watching the scene unfold between Marcus and the tall, lanky figure he still hadn't recognized as Snoop Dogg. The sweet smell of success, and something else, lingered in the air. "Last warning," Marcus said, pulling out his cell phone. "Leave now, or I'm calling both security and the police." His hand shook slightly as he held the phone, but his voice remained stern and commanding. Years of looking down on people had become a hard habit to break. Snoop lowered his sunglasses slightly, looking directly at Marcus. "My brother," he said in his smooth, distinctive voice, "you're making 3 big mistakes right now." He held up one long finger. "First, you're judging a book by its cover." Another finger went up. "Second, you're about to lose the biggest sale of the month." A third finger joined the others. "And third, you really don't want this to go viral." Several phones were already recording the incident. Sarah Chen, the assistant manager, had moved closer to the group, ready to step in. She knew exactly who Snoop was and could hardly believe Marcus's behavior, even though she'd seen his prejudices in action before. Viral? Marcus scoffed, his face getting redder. You think I care about your social media followers? This is a prestigious business, not your little street corner. He turned to the nearest salesperson. Jimmy, call the police. Tell them we have trespassers who won't leave. Jimmy, the young salesman, looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Mr. Thompson, he stammered, I really think you should. Now, Marcus barked, making Jimmy jump. One of Snoop's associates, a man in a sharp business suit, stepped forward with his tablet. Mr. Thompson, if you just look at these credentials. But Marcus was too far gone. I don't need to see your fake IDs or whatever counterfeit documents you're carrying. I've dealt with all types trying to scam their way in here. Just because you brought a man in a suit doesn't make this legitimate. The showroom had grown even quieter, if that was possible. The only sounds were the soft background music and the clicking of Marcus's expensive shoes as he paced back and forth. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows, creating an almost theatrical scene. Snoop's other associate was quietly filming everything on his phone. He caught the looks of embarrassment on the employees' faces, the shock of the customers, and the growing anger in Marcus's expression. This would make for quite a story later. Listen here, Marcus continued, his voice getting louder. I've worked too hard to build this dealership's reputation to have it ruined by. He paused, clearly choosing his next words carefully, but his tone said everything his words didn't. Snoop raised his hand calmly, stopping Marcus mid-sentence. Let me tell you something about reputation, he said, his voice carrying across the silent showroom. A real businessman knows that respect and good service bring success, not discrimination. Marcus's face twisted with anger. How dare you accuse me of discrimination? I'm protecting my business from people who clearly don't belong here. Just look at how you're dressed. He gestured wildly at Snoop's designer streetwear. This is a luxury car dealership, not a hip-hop video set. Several gasps echoed through the showroom. Sarah covered her face with her hands, unable to watch the train wreck continuing in front of her. A couple of customers near the back door quietly slipped out, shaking their heads in disgust. Snoop remained remarkably calm, which seemed to infuriate Marcus even more. The rapper reached into his pocket, pulling out not a wallet this time, but a phone. With a slight smile playing on his lips, he pressed a few buttons and held it to his ear. Yeah, it's me, he said into the phone. You're gonna want to see what's happening at Elite Motors right now. Bring the paperwork. He ended the call and looked at Marcus, whose anger was now mixed with confusion. The showroom remained silent, the tension building like a powder keg ready to explode. No one knew it yet, but in the next few minutes, Marcus's whole world would turn upside down, and Elite Motors would never be the same. Within 15 minutes of Snoop's phone call, a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled into the Elite Motors parking lot. Two men in expensive suits stepped out, carrying leather briefcases. The afternoon sun caught their gold watches as they walked briskly toward the showroom entrance. Marcus was still standing his ground, though his confidence had started to crack slightly. He didn't like the way his employees were looking at him, or how the tall man in front of him seemed so calm despite all the threats. Something wasn't right, but he couldn't put his finger on it. The glass doors swooshed open as the two men entered. Mr. Brodus, one of them called out respectfully, nodding at Snoop. Marcus's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. He knew that name from somewhere, but where? Perfect timing, Snoop said, his signature relaxed smile spreading across his face. Bring those papers over here. I think Mr. Thompson needs to see something important. The two lawyers, because that's clearly what they were, opened their briefcases on the hood of a nearby Mercedes. They pulled out several official-looking documents with gold seals and lots of signatures. Mr. Thompson, the taller lawyer said, I'm Richard Hayes, Chief Legal Counsel for Death Row Records and its subsidiaries. He spread out the papers carefully, including, as of 3 months ago, Luxury Auto Group Holdings, the parent company of Elite Motors. Marcus's face went from red to pale in seconds. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Behind him, Sarah Chen couldn't help but let out a small laugh, quickly covering it with a cough. Wait. Marcus stammered. finally looking more closely at the tall man he'd been threatening to throw out. The hat, the voice, the casual confidence, it all suddenly clicked. You're Snoop Dogg, the rapper said calmly, extending his hand. Or, as your corporate paperwork says, Calvin Broadus Jr., majority shareholder of your parent company. He pulled his sunglasses off completely. But you were too busy judging my clothes to ask my name, weren't you? The showroom erupted in whispers. Jimmy, the young salesman, was practically bouncing with excitement. Several customers who had stayed to watch the drama unfold were already typing furiously on their phones, sharing the incredible scene on social media. I didn't. Marcus struggled to find words as he stared at the ownership documents. There it was in black and white. Death Row Records had acquired Luxury Auto Group holdings in a major business deal 3 months ago, the same company that owned Elite Motors and 15 other high-end dealerships across California. The second lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Brodus has been conducting undercover visits to all our dealerships, he explained, his voice professional but with a hint of satisfaction. We're assessing customer service standards and employee behavior across the entire group. Snoop leaned against the Mercedes he'd been interested in earlier. And I got to say, he drawled, this visit has been very educational. He gestured to his associate who had been filming everything. Got it all on video too. Marcus's legs felt weak. He grabbed the edge of a nearby desk to steady himself. All those years of judging people by their appearance, all those potential customers he turned away, and now this, he just tried to throw the owner of the company out of his own dealership. Sarah stepped forward, her tablet in hand. I have those sales records you asked about before, Mr. Brodus, she said confidently. The ones showing how many customers we turned away based on appearance. She gave Marcus a pointed look. I've been keeping track. The showroom had become crowded now. Every employee who wasn't with a customer had found a reason to be near the unfolding scene. Even the security guard Marcus had called was standing in the back, trying not to laugh. Well, Mr. Thompson, Snoop said, straightening up to his full height, looks like we need to have a serious conversation about the future of Elite Motors. He nodded to the lawyers. And about your role in it. The afternoon sun continued to shine through the windows, but to Marcus, the room felt very, very cold. His perfect world of prejudices and assumptions had just come crashing down around him, and there was no putting it back together. The next hour at Elite Motors was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Word spread quickly through the dealership, and employees who had the day off started showing up just to witness the historic moment. The showroom buzzed with excitement as Snoop Dogg, now recognized by everyone, made himself comfortable in Marcus's office, or rather, his office. Marcus sat in a chair across from his own desk, his tie loosened and his usual confident posture completely gone. Sarah Chen had brought him a glass of water, which sat untouched on the desk. His hands wouldn't stop shaking every time he tried to reach for it. So, Snoop said, leaning back in the leather chair that Marcus had specially ordered last year, let's talk about what's been happening at my dealership. He emphasized the word "my" just enough to make Marcus wince. The rapper's calm demeanor somehow made the situation even more intense. Outside the office, employees gathered in small groups, sharing stories they'd been afraid to tell before. Jimmy, the young salesman, was telling anyone who would listen about the time Marcus had chased away a famous basketball player because he came in wearing gym clothes after practice. Man had a contract worth millions, Jimmy said, shaking his head. Ended up buying 3 cars from our competitor down the street. Inside the office, Snoop's associates were showing him screenshots of social media. The video of Marcus trying to throw Snoop out had already gone viral, with millions of views and thousands of comments. Hashtag Elite Motors and hashtag SnoopBoss were trending on several platforms. Sarah had brought in a thick folder of customer complaints that she'd been collecting secretly for the past year. I knew someday someone would need to see these, she explained to one of the lawyers. The folder contained dozens of incidents where potential customers had been treated poorly based on their appearance. Marcus watched helplessly as his carefully built world crumbled around him. Every few minutes, his phone would buzz with notifications. Messages from his country club friends, texts from his wife asking why he was trending on social media, and emails from other business contacts who had already seen the video. Here's what I don't understand, Snoop said, flipping through the complaint files. You turned away good money because you didn't like how people looked. He shook his head slowly. That's not just wrong, it's bad business. The afternoon sun had started to set, casting long shadows through the office windows. Outside, curious onlookers had begun gathering in the parking lot, hoping to catch a glimpse of what was happening inside. Some held up signs that read "Karma" and "Justice Served." One of the lawyers was typing rapidly on his laptop, preparing official documents. "Mr. Thompson's actions have exposed the company to significant liability," he explained to Snoop. "We found evidence of systematic discrimination that could result in serious legal consequences." But Snoop seemed to be thinking about something else. He stood up and walked to the window, watching the crowd outside grow larger. Camera crews from local news stations had started to arrive, setting up their equipment in the parking lot. "You know what's crazy?" Snoop said, turning back to Marcus. "I was actually going to buy 5 cars today, 3 for the business, 1 for my cousin, and that limited edition Mercedes for myself." He gestured at the showroom floor below. "That would have been your biggest sale this month, maybe this year." Marcus slumped further in his chair. The realization of how badly he had messed up was hitting him harder with each passing minute. Years of judging people, of turning away customers based on nothing but prejudice, and now it had all caught up with him in the most public way possible. Sarah knocked on the office door, entering with more papers. "The sales team wanted me to share this," she said, handing Snoop a spreadsheet. "It's our estimate of lost sales from the last 2 years, just from customers we know were turned away without cause." The numbers on the spreadsheet were staggering. Millions in potential sales had walked out the door because of Marcus's discriminatory policies. And those were just the ones they knew about. By the next morning, the Elite Motors incident had become national news. Every major news channel was playing the viral video of Marcus trying to throw Snoop Dogg out of his own dealership. The story had spread like wildfire across social media, with celebrities and regular people sharing their own experiences of being judged while shopping. Marcus sat in his living room, watching his face appear on TV again and again. His phone had been ringing non-stop since yesterday, but he hadn't answered a single call. His wife Janet paced behind the couch, worried about what this meant for their future. "What were you thinking?" she asked for the 100th time. "All these years, I told you to treat people with respect, but you wouldn't listen." She picked up her tablet and showed him yet another news article about the incident. Meanwhile, at Elite Motors, the atmosphere was completely different. Snoop had called an all-staff meeting in the showroom before opening hours. Every employee was present, including those who normally worked at the service center in the back. "First things first," Snoop announced, standing next to the same Mercedes he'd been interested in yesterday. "Nobody's losing their jobs today." A collective sigh of relief went through the room. "Except one person," he added, and everyone knew who he meant. Sarah Chen stood near the front, her tablet ready to take notes. She had spent most of the night preparing reports about the dealership's past practices and suggestions for improvement. Now, she watched as Snoop's team shared their plans for the future. "We're going to make some big changes," one of Snoop's business managers explained. "Starting with mandatory training for all staff." He clicked through some slides on the big screen they'd set up. "We're talking about customer service, diversity awareness, and how to create a welcoming environment for everyone." The employees listened carefully, many nodding in agreement. Some shared looks of relief. They had wanted these changes for a long time, but had been afraid to speak up under Marcus's management. Across town, Marcus received an official email from the company's HR department. His hands shook as he read it on his phone. The letter was clear. He was being removed from his position as manager, effective immediately. But surprisingly, he wasn't being fired outright. Instead, the letter outlined a different kind of consequence. If Marcus wanted to keep any role with the company, he would need to complete an extensive diversity and inclusion training program, work as a junior salesperson at different dealerships across the city, participate in community outreach programs, write a public apology, share his story as part of the company's new training materials. Back at the dealership, Snoop was implementing immediate changes. "Starting today," he announced, "we're creating a customer feedback system that can't be ignored." He pointed to new tablets being installed around the showroom. "Every customer gets to rate their experience, and these ratings go straight to corporate." Sarah was named interim manager, and her first task was to reach out to past customers who had been turned away. "We're inviting them back," she explained to the staff. with special offers and sincere apologies. The local news crews were still outside, hoping to catch more of the story. Through the windows, everyone could see a group of people gathering. Not protesters this time, but potential customers who had heard about the changes happening at Elite Motors. "One more thing," Snoop said, wrapping up the meeting. "That video yesterday, it's going to be part of our new training program for every dealership in our group. Sometimes the best lessons come from the worst examples." As the staff prepared to open for the day, there was a sense of excitement in the air. The dark cloud of discrimination that had hung over Elite Motors was finally lifting, replaced by something new, hope for a better future, and the knowledge that karma sometimes arrives in unexpected ways. Outside, the morning sun shone on the dealership's windows, making everything look bright and new, a perfect symbol for the fresh start that was beginning at Elite Motors. 3 months had passed since the infamous day when Snoop Dogg was almost thrown out of his own dealership. Marcus Thompson's life had changed completely during this time. Instead of his usual designer suits, he now wore the simple black polo shirt uniform of a trainee salesperson at Downtown Motors, another dealership in the company's network. Every morning, Marcus arrived early for his training sessions. Today, he sat in a small classroom with 5 other sales trainees, watching videos about customer service and respect. The instructor was a successful car salesman who happened to have tattoos covering both arms and wore his hair in dreadlocks. "Remember," the instructor said, pointing to the screen, "every person who walks through those doors is a potential customer. Their clothes don't tell their story. Their appearance doesn't show what's in their bank account." Marcus took notes carefully. He had already completed 6 weeks of intensive diversity training, and now he was learning things he should have known years ago. The most surprising part? He was actually becoming a better salesperson. At Elite Motors, things were flourishing under Sarah Chen's management. The dealership had set new sales records for 3 months straight. The showroom always buzzed with energy as a diverse group of customers felt comfortable browsing the luxury vehicles. "Check this out," Jimmy said to a coworker, showing him the latest sales figures on his tablet. "We've sold more cars in the past 3 months than we did in the previous 6 months under Marcus." The numbers didn't lie. Treating everyone with respect was good for business. Snoop made regular visits to check on the changes. Today, he walked through the showroom, nodding approvingly at what he saw. Customers of all backgrounds were being helped by salespeople who showed genuine interest in their needs. The security cameras that Marcus had installed to watch suspicious people now simply helped ensure everyone's safety. Meanwhile, Marcus was learning valuable lessons at Downtown Motors. His current assignment was to work with customers whom he would have previously turned away. Yesterday, he had sold a luxury SUV to a young tech entrepreneur who came in wearing ripped jeans and a hoodie. "Man, that was my biggest sale yet," Marcus told his wife Janet over dinner. "And you know what? The guy didn't care that I used to be a manager. He just appreciated that I listened to what he wanted and treated him with respect." Janet noticed the changes in her husband. The arrogant edge in his voice was gone, replaced by a new kind of confidence, one built on genuine understanding rather than prejudice. Even their teenage daughter had mentioned that Dad seemed different, more open-minded. Back at Elite Motors, Sarah had implemented all sorts of new programs. There was a monthly community car show that welcomed everyone, special financing options for young entrepreneurs, and a mentorship program for aspiring mechanics from local schools. "The transformation has been amazing," Sarah explained to a reporter who was doing a follow-up story. "We're not just selling cars anymore, we're building relationships with our community." The story of Elite Motors had become a case study in business schools. Students learned about how discrimination and prejudice could hurt a business and how creating an inclusive environment could lead to success. One day, while Marcus was arranging brochures at his new workplace, a familiar face walked in. It was Snoop Dogg, making another surprise visit to his dealerships. This time, Marcus didn't see the casual clothes or the laid-back style. He saw what he should have seen that first day, a successful businessman who deserved respect. "Mr. Broaddus," Marcus said, using Snoop's real name. "Welcome to Downtown Motors." Snoop smiled, recognizing the genuine change in Marcus's demeanor. "How's the training going?" he asked, genuinely interested in the answer. "I'm learning something new every day," Marcus replied honestly. "And I owe you an apology for—" "Nah," Snoop interrupted with a wave of his hand. Your actions speak louder than words. I've been watching your progress reports. Keep growing, that's all that matters. As Snoop walked away to inspect the rest of the dealership, Marcus returned to his work with a small smile. Sometimes the biggest lessons in life came from the most unexpected teachers. 6 months had passed since the day that changed everything at Elite Motors. The dealership looked different now, not just because of the new signs and modern decorations, but because of the energy that filled the showroom. People of all backgrounds walked in confidently, knowing they would be treated with respect. Sarah Chen sat in what used to be Marcus's office, reviewing the latest sales figures with a satisfied smile. Elite Motors had become the top-performing dealership in the entire luxury auto group. The wall behind her desk displayed framed articles about their transformation, including a cover story in Business Weekly titled "How Snoop Dogg Transformed a Dealership's Culture." "Sarah, you've got to see this," Jimmy called from the showroom floor. He was pointing at his phone, showing a new social media post that was going viral. It was a side-by-side comparison. On one side, the infamous video of Marcus trying to throw Snoop out, and on the other, a recent clip of Marcus helping a young couple buy their first luxury car at Downtown Motors. The difference in Marcus was striking. Gone was the arrogant manager who judged people by their appearance. Instead, there was a humble salesman who listened carefully to his customers' needs. His sales numbers weren't as high as they used to be, but his customer satisfaction ratings were through the roof. "Look who's here," someone whispered, and heads turned as Snoop Dogg walked into the showroom. He wasn't making a surprise visit this time. Today was special. Elite Motors was celebrating its most successful quarter ever, and Snoop had come to make an announcement. The staff gathered around as Snoop took his place near the center of the showroom. Television crews set up their cameras, ready to capture the moment. This time, when people pulled out their phones to record, it wasn't to capture bad behavior, it was to remember a victory. 6 months ago, Snoop began, his voice carrying across the quiet showroom. Something bad turned into something good. We could have just fired one person and moved on. Instead, we decided to change the whole game. He gestured around the showroom. "Look at us now." The numbers told the story. Sales were up 150%, customer satisfaction had reached 98%, and the dealership had won 3 industry awards for excellence in service. But the most important changes couldn't be measured in numbers. Marcus stood at the back of the crowd, wearing his Downtown Motors uniform. He had asked permission to attend today's ceremony, wanting to see the results of the transformation he had unintentionally started. His wife Janet stood beside him, holding his hand supportively. "And that's why," Snoop continued, "I'm announcing 2 things today. First, Elite Motors will become the training center for all our dealerships nationwide. Sarah Chen will lead our new corporate training program, teaching other dealers how to build an inclusive business." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise as applause filled the showroom, but Snoop wasn't finished. "Second," he said, looking toward the back of the room, "Marcus Thompson, come up here." The crowd parted as Marcus walked forward nervously. He had no idea what was coming. "Marcus here messed up big time," Snoop said, putting a hand on Marcus's shoulder. But instead of running away, he faced his mistakes. He did the work. He changed. And that's why, starting next month, he'll be sharing his story as part of our training program. Marcus blinked in surprise. This was his chance to turn his biggest mistake into a teaching moment for others. The ceremony ended with Snoop unveiling a new plaque near the entrance. It read, "Welcome to Elite Motors, where everyone is valued." Below these words was the date of the infamous incident, marking not a day of shame, but the beginning of positive change. As the crowds began to disperse, a young man in casual clothes walked into the dealership. A few months ago, someone might have judged him by his appearance. But today, 3 salespeople approached him with genuine smiles, each ready to help him find his perfect car. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, making the cars sparkle. But the brightest thing in Elite Motors wasn't the polished vehicles. It was the spirit of transformation that turned a moment of discrimination into a movement of change.